Up and welcome to Monday. Hope you're having a great day, and if you've just woken up, then I hope you've had a great night sleep. Thanks so much for all the questions today. There's quite a few. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through them all. For some reason, I've absolutely got millions of questions come through. So I've just taken a load of them down, and I'll see how I can do. But as usual, if you want to add a question to the live stream and write it in the comments, there's no problem. I'll do my best to get through those as well. So without further ado, let's get on with it. And first question. So do you have any tips for how you manage or save your money? I suppose we're talking about this from a business perspective. I think I could go on all night about this, and I will probably be doing a course on this at some point later in the year. But there are three levels or three kind of boxes I put money into. Firstly, there's safety money, there's investing money, and then there's risk money. So you can probably work them out. But in short, the safety money is that which is going to ensure your business is still alive next month. So you have the projectable income, the amount of money you're expecting to come in the month. If you don't have that yet, you need to strive and work to be in a position where ideally you have the kind of product or service that allows that kind of thing to happen. But nevertheless, you have certain money each month that you have assigned to ensuring the company can survive. Okay, it is a little foolish to spend it all, no matter how great the opportunity seems, if you're putting your business at risk. People might think, well, it's great to dive at risk, but as a businessman and as a CEO or owner of a business, it's not particularly wise to spend all of your cash on opportunities when in fact it means that you potentially can't pay the bills that month. There are very extreme circumstances when it might be different, but especially if you have the responsibility of, for instance, people that you're paying in terms of staff and things like that, you do need to think about covering that. So there's the safety pot, which literally just to break even and get by. Pay all the wages, keep the lights on, as I know. The second level is investment money. So this is the money that you use to ideally reinvest into the company or do things that are going to be fairly safe bets, but that require, perhaps they bring with them a minute amount of risk. So I would say you have some money doing this when you're much younger. You have a lot more money doing this when you're a bit older, or at least when if you feel that you're getting on in your life. You don't want to be too risky with all of your money, of course, because you need to make sure you're looking forward to look after yourself later on. But the third point is important, is risk money, as I call it. And it doesn't mean you kind of throw it all on a roulette table, but there is it's a really good idea to take just the kind of the cream at the top, the extra little bit of money. And ideally, if you're quite young, or if things are going well with the business, you should be trying to be quite aggressive with some of the investment you make. And I've found there's been a lot of good fortune in having a set amount of money each month that is aside from the money I use to invest in different things, aside from the money I have to make sure the business is kept safe, and that is for high volatile strategies. So perhaps I'm going to invest in a new company. I did this recently with someone. I decided to invest a fund of money in this business for just about 2 months. And so that was from my risk pot. I basically took a load of money and said, there you go, here are our terms. We agreed on it and we decided to work together and see how he did. And he actually followed through, did a great job with it. And in fact, it came through as profit. But if I had used safety money or investment money for other things for that, it might have been a little bit dangerous. So any experimentation for your business, anything completely new that's untrialed, or something completely different, you need to perhaps maybe use that pot for that. But that's kind of the short version. I think that's a sensible way of managing and saving it. I very much as well have been brought up in the school of, if you don't have the money, you don't get it. Having said that, there is a time and a place for when you need to go and get some credit or some funding. What I would say to startup business owners is, don't think by default that you need to go get investors or that you need to get funding. In fact, it may well be that you really just don't need it at all. There are certain situations, again, when you really do. For instance, if you look at Amazon and how that built up, and I covered that on Startup Business TV recently, they needed to get investors because they needed to go buy warehouses and things like that. But it may be you run the kind of business where that's not necessarily applicable. I do think that it's the case that some people look to get investors or venture capitalists involved without realizing that arguably you may be giving up some of your business. Maybe they're after equity or something like that, or at the very least you're going to be in that person's pocket. So that's something to think about. But that would be some basic tips on managing money. Put it into those 3 pots, but make sure that first pot is always fulfilled. And as you're at the very start of your business, that should be one of your major milestones. I cover this on the 8-Step Startup course. One of the first milestones is making sure you're not making a loss. That means your personal savings are no longer going into the business, and it means that your number one job is to make sure you're generating enough income each month that your business doesn't go backwards, as in it's not costing more to run the business and build the product or service than it is than the amount that you're receiving each month from people. Next milestone, of course, is making sure you have a little extra buffer that you then are using for particular things, and then of course the higher level is for paying yourself if you feel you want to. But I strongly suggest after you've made sure everything's shored up, the next level is more investment. Thereafter you then go pay yourself. A big mistake people make is the moment they start making money, they're drawing it all out and spending it on themselves. You pay yourself last. Sorry, if you want to be super successful and get your businesses scaling, and I think of all the things I focus on the most with mentees and the companies I work with, scaling is the big thing we do very well. And growing a company comes from feeling a bit of pain and sacrifice, and it's not just in the hard work box, it's also in the getting paid box. It's better to not get paid that much, seriously. If you can live like you're broke and push all of your money into your business to keep investing and growing it, you'll reap rewards further down the line, because otherwise it can only grow so fast if you're just taking that lifeblood from it in terms of money it's got sitting there. Okay, next question. How do you feel about faking it until you make it? When is it acceptable? This is a question I was asked a little while back, but I thought I'd put it into this Q&A because I didn't answer it last week. This is a really interesting question, and I think it's very current. And a really good friend I've got online here who has a wonderful group. If you're into Facebook ads, a guy called Nick Kuzmich is amazing, pretty much as good as it gets. This is the kind of guy who counts amongst his clients the likes of Tony Robbins, and he's done Facebook ads for him. So he does 7-figure Facebook ad campaigns, and he knows exactly all the science of it. And his Facebook marketing mastery group is spectacular. He's recently done a post on this, and in short, if you pretend that you're successful all the time, then I've posted about this myself recently. The most you can hope for, really, is that people will believe you, right? But the thing is, when you pretend, you tend to find you're quite broke still. And it tends to come out in the wash eventually. People realise you're bullshitting. And the end result is that actually, people can see through it. I know people who do this quite a bit. And let's be clear about this. It's important when you're building your brand and when you're sharing with the world, let's talk about online, when you're sharing with the world who you are and what you're up to, it's important that you don't share loads of negative stuff, right? So, if you've had a rubbish time and things are going badly and you're a bit of a loser and you're actually no good at the service or product you're selling, well, you don't want to share that with the world. That's different to having some humility. Okay, it's very important to be human, because then people are more likely to relate to you if you do that. If you show people that maybe you do have weaknesses in some areas, be very calculating about how you do this. But if you do show that kind of thing, show people you're a real human being. Show them, in fact, that sometimes things don't go quite right, but it's different to pretending that you are epically successful at all times, because after a while people might not believe it. I think with that in mind, you should bear in mind that when you are sharing perception of yourself and your product, you should focus first and foremost on giving value. It's not about pretending to be anyone or anything. Forget that. It should be more focused on helping people. And I've seen it work so well with myself. I'm so fortunate. I've seen it work so well in the past that when you really focused in more than anything on giving value to people, helping them, and providing something of worth to a situation where someone can really benefit from it, rather than me as a kind of a scream, try and please like my picture kind of thing, you do find that you reap greater rewards. There may not be the immediacy of it, but you'll do find that over time people like to buy into that story more. And like I say, after a while, if you're just banging on about how great you are, it gets boring, first of all, because everyone's doing it, and secondly, people see straight through it. And I know people like that, and I just think I can't take them seriously anymore. That's the problem. Devon Scott's just pumped on a really good a quote here from Warren Buffett. When the tide goes out, only then do you discover who's been swimming naked. Is absolutely right. You get found out in the end. So faking it till you make it works for particular things, okay? Your perception is important, right? So if you live a disorganized, disheveled life, and you typically day to day look quite feral, and you've got plates of unfinished food around your house, and you're going to but you have great insights into being a lifestyle coach, and you want to do that thing, well then fake being organized and clean and things like that by tidying your bloody house up before you do an online video or something like that. Things like that make sense, right? In terms of perception, you're going to come across in the way in which the audience is going to respond to you. Get out there and go to some nice places, take some pictures near, if you work in a wonderful office that has a great view, then take pictures of the view. It doesn't mean you're the CEO of the company, but it does show people a kind of lifestyle that if you're into that kind of thing, it might be worth sharing. But just be careful, because you do find that if you are overdoing it with the faking, people will kind of find you out. The best way around this is to evidence, okay? If you provide evidence behind what you're doing, then people tend to believe you. And if you can't back up what you're talking about, well, where are you really? Maybe it's time to focus in on being better at what you do and improving your craft. And seriously, whilst I wasn't really involved in online promotion, say 10 years ago, of my own personal brand and companies, what I was doing back then was really focusing on being good at helping businesses grow and do sales and things like that. And so maybe sometimes you have to kind of hibernate, go a bit hermetic, and focus in on being better at what you do, so that you can then turn out some great results. If you want to show yourself living a great life at parties and things like that, well then go get yourself invited to those parties. Don't pretend you're going to them. Certainly don't do the green screen backdrop and put Saint-Tropez behind you, because everyone's gonna no one's gonna fall for it. So be careful is what I would say with that. And what I can't stand is people who pretend fully, as in, I'm riding in a private jet. It's obviously not mine, but I'm going to pretend it is. It's just absurd, because again, we're all kind of used to it by now. We've been online enough, and if you've been exposed for more than 5 minutes to the kind of thing, you get used to that, and it's not going to work anymore. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, let's move on, because I could rant about that, and I don't think I want to really. I'm struggling with my age. I'm 17 and offering consulting services. I keep getting people say they don't want to learn from a kid. That's a really good question. Well, it's not really a question, it's a statement, but let me respond to it. I was in touch with someone recently who I think was 19 or 20. He's involved with Facebook advertising and working in the real science of that. And he has a similar problem as well. And I remember saying to him, all I care about is results. Seriously, I just couldn't care less, because especially nowadays when things are measurable, if you get someone who's going to deliver something for you, as long as the result's there, who cares? Does it really matter if the person I get my Facebook marketing advice from is 50, 30 or 15? It just doesn't matter at all. It comes down to what they actually deliver. And I think that that aside, if you're very young and you're offering consulting services, and much like I mentioned in the previous answer, think more about what you're actually offering. You're not offering the fact you're 17. If you're trying to leverage the fact you're 17, that's not really going to work for what you're offering. I don't know anything about what consulting services you do. You just said consulting services in the question. But what I do think is that you should focus in on the things you've done well. So it's no different being a 17 or young person. It's no different to being a nobody. It's no different to being someone who's literally starting out and no one knows about you. What you got to do right away is get social proof and get people saying it's a really good idea. And so you start offering services for free. Do a month. Oh, I want to make some profit though. Forget that for now. You need to get yourself in a position where people actually know who you are and respect you. So go offer some free services for a month, okay? Do it whilst you still got a 9 to 5 or while you can afford it because you've got savings, but offer some stuff for free. Go and impress people. And then what's going to happen is you'll start getting advocates, you'll start getting testimonials if you ask for them, which you should. If you do a good enough job, okay, which is ideally what you're aiming to do because you've got this as your profession. If you do a good enough job, you'll find that people are happy to give you testimonials. Start sharing that. Those people then are giving you a bit more of a feel that that you're someone who knows what they're doing. Nick Kuzmich, who I mentioned earlier, I had never heard of the guy, and he's got a Facebook advertising group like another 20 other people probably do. But when you see that he's worked with certain people, and then when he posts evidence of his results, and then when he gives value, again, gives insights that prove he actually knows what he's talking about, suddenly you think, well, you know what? Who cares that I didn't know who he was? The reality is the guy clearly knows what he's talking about. So evidence in the form of testimonials, evidence in the form of evidence that you know what you're doing. So screen grabs, whatever it might be that represents your product working, go share that kind of thing as well. And you'll tend to find that people will overlook many other things as well. And that's how you get people who are very young who become tremendously successful, because people can see the evidence for themselves. It's not because there's anything else to it. It's as simple as that. Either you're tremendously charming, you've got great personality and people kind of buy into that, or you've got great evidence to back it up, and those things are going to really help you the most. When is good time to get an accountant? And what is the next episode of Startup TV going to be on? I'll answer the second bit first. I'm not going to tell you is the answer. I think for now it's quite good fun to not share what it is, because then you have to watch it, which is my very shameless explanation of why I don't tell you which one it is. So yeah, the next one will be probably coming out in the next 24 hours or so. I'm busy doing it. It'll be fun because if you watch the last 3 Startup Business TV episodes, we've done Nike, Starbucks and Amazon, so 3 very successful companies in many ways. And then the next one is going to be a company that was epically successful, but I say was, they then had quite the downturn, so we're going to learn some lessons from them, but that's all I'm going to share. You might better guess who it is if you look through enough of my posts. And anyway, the first question: when's a good time to get an accountant? For me, it was immediately, okay? If you can afford an accountant, and it was actually my cousin who is a journalist. He's an award-winning journalist, actually. And he said one of the best piece of advice I can ever give you is that you should definitely get yourself a great accountant. And so I thought I would try it out. And my experience with having an accountant after he told that to me was fantastic. I made sure I got a good one. So a guy who'd been helping me out was a multimillionaire who'd had an accounting company work with him for about 30 years with his business. He then decided, or rather he shared that he'd been working with them, and the partner sat down with me. We had lunch together. It was an amazing relationship, and there is no stress at all for me and my business when it comes to that accounting. It's all dealt with, it's all simple. They're so diligent, and if you can find a good accountant, it's worth the pain of paying a few $1,000s or pounds or whatever you are to have that, because then you don't have to think about it. If you run an accounting firm, then why not do as much of it as you can? But the reality is I could learn to do my own tax returns, but I have other things I would rather be doing with my time. time, but moreover, there is the opportunity to get someone to do it right. And it may be different whatever country you're in, but here in the UK, if you do a tax return submitted late or incorrect, you can get fined sometimes several £1,000s for it, and I'd rather not take that risk. So I'd rather have someone say to me, Richard, when we need information from you, fill out in this spreadsheet, okay? And I have an accountant who just fills it in, and I literally, at the end of the financial year, click send, and it's gone and it's dealt with. And on occasion, I get a mail through that says, here's the latest, such and such has happened, sign here. I read it, it makes sense, and I send it away. So I would suggest that, because otherwise it will sap a lot of your time, especially as you start to grow. There's a lot more to go on with it, and there comes to the point when with certain sizes of companies we maybe need to do different things, especially then there's payroll and all that kind of thing as well. Strong advice is go get an accountant. It's worth the pain. I think my very first year of business, I just broke even after having paid several £1,000s of accounting fees, and I kind of partly resented it because I thought I would have had a load of money I could have taken out for me as a nice well done. But actually I ended up thinking, do you know what, life's a lot easier because I didn't really need to think about accounting. So that's something I would suggest you do straight away is the answer if you can. I mostly generate leads for my business through Facebook chat. Okay, when is a good time to start the pitch and send them a link? Okay, this is more, I could add this actually to the sales Q&A on Thursday. I think I will, because the audience there will benefit from it. Good question. So this is no different to anywhere else. If you are going cold to someone, okay, so if you're calling, meeting, or Facebook chatting, or Instagram, or whatever it might be, I strongly suggest you focus more on getting to know someone, getting a connection, relating, adding value, and then organically the conversation, should you show that you know what you're talking about and be of value to them, should then be naturally and organically taken to a stage where they then ask you to tell them more about your business. You get this all the time, and no doubt you've experienced this if you're on Instagram. How many messages a day do you get of someone saying, hi there, hi, nice to connect, click here for my video, do you want to learn how to make more money, and all this nonsense. And you just think, wow, your opening message is pitching me. And it's just, again, it's one of those things where you hear all the time, just not really going to be interested now, because of course much of this is scams. And I strongly suggest that you recognize that if you look at the reason why people buy things, hello Greg, hello Venu, thanks very much for joining us. If you look at why people buy things, there's this simple rule of 3 different statistics. I've mentioned this before possibly. The reason why people buy things, it's been shown, typically it's 10% focused on the actual product, 35 or so percent mostly focused on the actual sales technique, so the method or approach, but 55% of the reason why people buy something is really down to a connection or rapport with either the person or organization or business that product or service represents. So what I'm saying here is you're more likely to buy a terrible product or solution with awful sales technique from your best friend than you are a phenomenal product, really well delivered by an arsehole that you can't stand, okay? So that's what it comes down to. 55% is down to relationships, connection, because people by people is the saying, and we are humans who are a very social animal, and we rely on building trust with someone in a social environment to be in a position to relinquish or give up things that are of high value to us. So that, for instance, is money. I'm only going to open my wallet and give someone some money if I really trust that they're going to do a good job with my money and give me some strong reward for it. So with that in mind, your focus really, when you're opening up with people anywhere, not just on Facebook chat, should be to try and relate to them. Don't come across like you've got an agenda, because actually, and actually the best way to do that is to not have an agenda in the first few messages. Just chat with them, just say hi. Why have you contacted them in the first place? Okay, it should be that you contact someone for a reason. Have you got loads of mutual contacts? Talk about them. Did you like one of their Facebook posts? Talk about that. Have they got something of interest in their world or something you both have in common? Talk about that. And that's a good way of opening things up. Then get to know them. The questions and the chat should really center around this person, less yourself. And then in time, you tend to find someone will say, do you know what, it's all been about me. What is it that you do? And then go from there. That doesn't mean, right, floodgates are open now, full on with my pitch. Play it cool, right? This is no different to chatting someone up and dating. Okay, just take it easy, talk a little bit about what you do, and ask if that might be of interest to them, or do they want to know more, or don't even offer those kind of questions, just tell them, see what then they say. Just keep the pressure off. Okay, talk a bit about you, share what you do, but don't suddenly slam in a huge block of copy and paste text that you pre-typed for them, because again, you're basically gonna lose your authenticity there. And there's a chap I remember learning from a while back, and he personally said, I literally never send anyone a link to my website, ever, unless they ask for it. So I'm never one of these people that says, oh, you should check out my site, here's the link. I don't entirely agree about that, because sometimes people ask, what is it you do? Is there any way I can get more information? Yeah, here's the link to my website. But he says, unless they're really asking for it, they leave it. And, it means that you're building the personal relationship first, they're building trust in you, and then that's the foundation you actually need to then build on, and of course then move towards a building relationship. The longer you take, in the sense that the more you invest time in interacting with someone, the more you get out of this. The more trust is built, that means that when it ultimately comes to going to selling a product, the more likely they're going to spend full rate with you or something like that as well. This sounds slightly manipulative, but it's not really. What it is being normal and being human and being authentic. And so everyone knows that ultimately if someone can help someone or offer a service, then as long as you trust them, they will buy it. In the same way as if you reach out to someone to eventually try and sell them something, but in fact it turns out that they have something great, well, it might be that you buy from them, but it should all be focused on starting the whole process based on a relationship being built. It's as simple as that, because that's how it should be always. And if you recognize this, then it means that in the long term, you're playing the game where you're focused on building a long relationship, because that person will feel so great about you. They don't just then buy a product, they share how great the experience has been. They then buy your bigger products and so on and so forth. So take a step back, take your time, build up to something. Going for the fast buck doesn't work. You might win occasionally, but people are savvy to it now. But also, even if it does work, what are you going to make? A few quid, and then that's it, really. So try your best to build more of a relationship, because that's your foundation for big things later on. I've done it so many times myself, and you can get wonderful things in the future, but it has to start on a relationship of trust and comfort. This is what closing all comes down to. Okay, next question. I'll do a few more. Mentoring. No, sorry, I misread it. So should I hire a sales or assistant first? This is a hard one. I used to be really strong on sales. I think an assistant is it depends on what you're doing, basically. It depends, because some products or services lend themselves to a very lean, simple business, and sometimes once you've built your product, it's a piece of cake to just roll it out. The administration isn't so hard at all, and actually it's better just to scale a sales business. And in fact, one company I've consulted with recently, they are probably 80 or 90% of their force is sales, and assistants are few and far between. And in fact, it used to be only sales and almost nobody else doing anything. I think they had one person who did admin, who helped out a bit, but otherwise pretty much the entire company was just sales. I do think that's it's dependent on the product, really. However, if you have loads going on in your world and you feel that each day you have your big things you're doing, so maybe you're doing some sales, maybe doing building a product, or maybe you're doing a conference or something like that, but then all the rest of the day is just punctuated with these tiny little administrative tasks, getting an assistant will be a game changer. It means that so much can be passed over. The more the more these little tasks can be given to someone else and you can tolerate a slightly lower standard, which typically is what you end up getting if you pass it on to someone else to do, someone work for you, you tend to find that you will do a good job there. Still, if if you can do both, I think is a good idea. But having an assistant is a really helpful thing, because if you can get them involved to take on a lot of the strain, you suddenly free up a lot of your time, which means you can kind of offset not having a sales role, because you could maybe do more of that yourself. An alternative is get the assistant to do sales. That's a clever way around it, okay? So the answer is inconclusive. It depends really on the kind of company you are. If I had to gun to head, I would say I would go with sales first, but that suits my business. I think after a while I would have needed to get an assistant anyway, but at the very, very start, you don't need it, so just get sales. That makes sense, because typically an assistant, with the greatest respect to them, is a liability unless they're doing sales themselves. Arguably they're not a liability, because of course they facilitate you making more money, but directly that particular position is going to cost you, and so bear that in mind, okay? So make sure you can really afford it. Often it's good to get a salesperson in to pay for themselves and an assistant, then you're away, okay? Next question. How do you motivate yourself to do the things that you hate but have to do? I don't think there's anything I actually hate. By the way, if you have any other questions, do share them here. But I don't think there's anything I necessarily hate, but there are things obviously at times that I'm like, oh, I really want to do something else, but I do need to do this. What I try my best to do is not focus on motivating myself. I focus on just doing it. What I've done is taught myself over the years, this is my perspective, by the way, this is all I'm giving you is my opinion. My view is the more time you spend trying to motivate yourself, you can almost liken that to being a little bit like procrastination. Now, bear with me. What I'm saying here is, if you are saying, I'm not in the mood today, but I have to do, let's say, I'm sure it might be fun for some of you, I have to do my accounts today. So if you feel that that's something you don't necessarily want to do, arguably waiting until you feel in a better mood to do your accounts is going to be a little bit of a waste of time. You know, saying things like, do you know what? I'm just going to go on YouTube. I'm going to watch a couple of motivational videos for an hour. Then I'll feel great about doing my work. Then I'll get on with it. What I'm saying is, now, and this is habitual, it takes time. What I'm saying is, if you get on with just doing it and put aside how you feel, then the result is the job gets done. Arguably the job might be done better if you were more motivated, but then it depends on what the task is. If I'm going to go and close a sale, well then of course I want to be motivated, but I'm inherently motivated when it comes to closing a sale because there's a great reward at the end of it, which I've associated with having this closing phone call, for instance. But if there's something I don't really want to do, I force myself just to do it. It's no different to having to do your washing up or whatever it is you might have to do, chores around the home, rather than think, oh, I don't want to do this, I can't, or thinking through the process of how you feel. Just do it, because then it gets done. So what I'm saying here is, if a task is completed, okay, whether I enjoyed it, as in was motivated, or did not enjoy it, not motivated, doesn't matter. If I enjoyed doing it, good for me. If I didn't enjoy doing it, who cares? It still got done. The main thing is that things get done, okay? Because what you'll end up finding otherwise, if you wait till you're motivated, often you'll be two hours into your day and you just have not really got the mojo. Plan your day, that's the best thing to do. Then execute the day. And nothing beats writing a list, numbering the list, so prioritizing it. Firstly, whack everything down you've got to do, then prioritizing it, put a number next to each one. And even better, what I tend to do is write a time when I'm going to do each one. How long is this going to take? Probably 15 minutes. How long is that going to take? Probably 30 minutes. Bang, bang, bang. There are my times of day when I'm going to do it. Right, now I've got myself some deadlines. Get on with that. Motivation, you know what? Who cares? That's too emotional. I'm being practical right now. Get on and do it. So that's my answer. That's what I do. But it takes training. Okay, so you've got to really commit to that approach day in, day out. It takes a lot of time. But eventually it does really help. A couple of comments coming through. Jackie, let me see. Maybe you can find a way to name segments as you talk on the screen itself, that'd be cool for more visual. I understand, okay? Yeah, absolutely. But alternatively, if I don't do that, you watch the whole thing, so that helps too. I try and keep it within 1 hour, so hopefully that will help. I do have, at the end of each Q&A, I will usually write what questions I go through, so I'll do my best to do that in order for you, Jackie. Hope that helps. Venu, you put a question there. What's your thought on buying into high-ticket franchise and your idea on those businesses online? So selling someone, I'm presuming you're saying, what's your thought on selling someone else's high-ticket franchise? Nothing wrong with that at all, because look at it this way, someone's already created the product, right? So if you're, for instance, interested in learning skills such as selling or seeing how a high-ticket franchise works ahead of building your own, well, what better way to do it than to go sell someone else's? I like to hope I'm half decent at sales, and I spent many years selling millions of pounds of products to people all over the world, but I learned that craft through doing it with someone else, as in I worked as an employee ahead of them building my own business, and it was a really good way of doing it, because I basically got to learn at the front line and make money doing it, and be paid rather doing it, rather than having to go through the pain of building the product as well, because the skill I was trying to learn there was learning sales and business. So that tended to work for me really well. I think it's a great idea if you want to ultimately go build one yourself. So hopefully that answers your question, Venu. And my idea on these businesses online, I can't see any reason why it shouldn't be online. I think it should be. In fact, all businesses really need to have an online presence. I think very few can do without it, actually. So hopefully that answers your point. Let's see what else has come through. Devin Exon said, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Devin. And Venu, use the 5-minute rule. Give yourself 5 minutes to decide whether or not you want to complete the task. So start for 5 minutes. Yeah, that's another way of doing it. So back on the previous question, Venu is a really good point. You can give yourself 5 minutes. Am I going to do this? Am I not going to do it? Well, another way of looking at it is, how does this impact my business? What I do find is that, and I've said this before, when it comes down to deciding on if something gets done or not, often we are unaware that we have an emotional reason why you want to do something, and you have a practical reason why you want to do something. Usually the emotional reason why you might do something centers around the self, okay, whereas the practical reason for doing something centers around essentially what's in it for the business. Now, if you are in your business mode and making decisions to do or not do a task for your business, well, then it's like having a child, right? At 4 a.m, if your baby is crying because it needs milk, emotionally, the self, I know you could argue this point, but the instinctive reaction, of course, we are hardwired to go feed the baby, but the response when you wake up is, I'm tired, I really would prefer to be sleeping. However, the practical response is much more important. It's much more prevalent, and the need to actually feed the baby, so you go and do that. The baby is what counts. And so sometimes you have to lose out, and it's no different with the business. So what I tend to find is, if I can take a step back, maybe not so much as 5 minutes, even 20 seconds, you just have to have a word with yourself and say, right now, am I trying not to do this task because I don't want to? It's fully subjective. Or am I not doing this task because actually the business doesn't need it? If the business needs this task to be done now, and I don't want to do it now, then too bad. Tough. The business has to win. Sorry, because I'm in my business mode. I am running my business. It needs to have what it needs, and I have to come second. Because if I always did what I wanted to do and not what the business needed, they are two different things in many occasions. You'll end up with a weak growth curve for your business, a very happy person in the short term, but then you'll feel greater pain, of course, because of your lack of stoicism, let's see. So that's my view on things. Did I answer that right? I hope I did, Ebony. Rodney's, what would be the best way to reach B2B salespeople for a subscription service, LinkedIn or Facebook? Good question. So is this, I'm guessing this might be if you're going to try and reach them to recruit them, perhaps. I would be if this is right, I don't know, so please let me know, Rodney, but if I was going to try and reach out to business salespeople to either subscribe to my service or to recruit them, I'd be on LinkedIn. I really would. And the reason why is because I've done it. It's worked really well for me in the past. I found that recruitment through LinkedIn has been very good, because you tend to find, whilst business is done a lot more on Facebook nowadays, it is the social platform. LinkedIn is much more the business platform, and LinkedIn is surging. So many people are on it. So if I want to bring people in, to buying my product, okay, well then I would probably start with LinkedIn, because that way I can identify their salespeople. I can engage with them on a business level, because they get it. You know, on LinkedIn you understand that people are connecting with you for business reasons. But I would also very soon I would then connect with them on Facebook. I would suggest we do that, because then that brings the social element, that gets a much more of a feeling of comfort, and you can build rapport better with someone that way as well. You want to be really getting on with someone, and it shouldn't be just that you have business interests in common as a way to work together or for someone to buy with you. There should be personal things in common as well. You want to get on with people. But if it's for recruitment, I'd be all over LinkedIn. In terms of adverts, I think is what you're suggesting, Rodney. I would use that. It works very well. But sometimes you've got to put in the graft. I found probably the best way to engage with people on a business level in B2B has been through LinkedIn and building lists. Not so much adverts. I know the reach isn't the same, but the sniper approach is so effective. And the sniper approach, for those who don't understand, the sniper approach is being selective of every single individual you're going to reach out to. And in fact, that's how I built the 8-Step Startup course to start with. I begun by going on LinkedIn, engaging with people I wanted to reach out to, and then writing them an individually crafted message. I could have found them on Facebook, no doubt they would have been there, but it kind of offered the right tone and context for my need to have a relationship with them. And many of us have then subsequently been involved on Facebook as well. Some of the authors have done that, Twitter as well, with a lot of these people, but it started typically with LinkedIn. Rodney, apologise if I didn't quite understand your question. Hopefully I did and understood and explained that properly. Let's do one more. So let me see what else I've got. Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about choosing the thing you are good at and doubling down on it. Yep. Do you stick to this or experiment and try things regardless? My answer to this is both. Okay. What I do as much as I can is I focus on the things that I'm good at. Okay, and the things that I believe I'm good at, and I've proven to myself I'm good at over the years because they've worked for me. But I also experiment, but specifically I experiment within those areas. Okay, so what I mean by that is I have my thrust, for instance, is working with startup businesses, and I consult with startup business owners, and I've helped them there, and I've done that for many, many years. Okay, so I've helped people with the crucial things. Maybe it's just consents, maybe it's the essentials of foundations and things like that. But then when I've experimented with new or other revenue channels and things like that, well, they've always been highly aligned with this original single point of focus. So what I'm saying is there are many devices to do the same thing, and I experiment with the different devices. And those things are, for instance, the 8-Step Startup course is still highly aligned because it's focused on startup business owners. Those 73 lessons are all tuned in to building a business. So it's just a different way of doing it. Likewise, Startup Business TV is about providing value for startup business owners. So it's highly aligned to that one thing I do, but the experimentation comes in the sense of doing different things. I'm putting together a conference that's going to happen. It's probably going to be in the new year, maybe a little bit towards the end of the year. That will be inviting some of my close friends as guests to speak, and these people will add great value to the conference, but the focus will no doubt be highly aligned to that one thing I do. So that's my response to that, is a bit of both, really. What I feel is a mistake is to recognize you do one thing, create one thing around it, and then stick only to that thing, because people, their needs and the world around you evolves very quickly, and you need to keep up with people. And if you keep your eyes peeled, it's a shameless plug now, but if you keep your eyes peeled for the next Startup Business TV episode coming out in the next 24 hours, you will see exactly what I mean by that. Staying with progress is really important. Okay, last couple of things before I go. Jackie, are you announcing the 5 startups for mentor program tomorrow? It's 3, just to be clear. There are going to be 3 people who receive the 30 days with me, looking after them and their startup businesses. Yes, tomorrow I will announce that. Just to explain, I've run this incentive for a few days now. If you're unaware of it, you have 24 hours or thereabouts to respond. On Facebook, send me a message. I will be offering 30 days free mentoring, 30 days consulting with you, building your business. And the reason being that I'm hoping in the new year to be having 5 companies. This is one of my goals, 5 new companies that I can invest in by 2017. And so in order to position companies to be in a great place for me to make those decisions, I'm offering 30 days for free to me to sit with you every single day and work through how your business works. So if you would like to win that incentive, 3 people will be winning it. I'll be announcing it tomorrow. You need to send me a message on Facebook, PM me, or email me, richard@8stepstartup.com. 30 words explaining why your business idea should be invested in, or your company should be invested in, or if you haven't quite set up the business idea yet, then it should be, why should you personally be invested in? And then, of course, the winners with the best answers. I've had a lot, by the way, so seriously, if you're going to enter it, make it punchy. I had one over the weekend, and it was, I'm not going to say it was lame, though, because it was like, I'm a really hard worker, and so you should pick me because I'm great, or words to that effect. You're not going to win anything, that kind of approach. It should be a given, right? Just in case it's not clear, it's a given that you're going to be a hard-working, ambitious individual. What else have you got? Because I hear that all the time. So something different, right? And so I'll pick 3 and I'll announce that tomorrow. So Jackie, I know you've applied, and I'm not giving anything away to anyone. All I'm saying is the announcement will be tomorrow. Luca, where is the conference going to be? It will be in London, because not because I'm lazy, but why wouldn't I have it in London when I live in the UK? But I would say it will be TBA in terms of where specifically. It's very likely next year I will probably do a conference in New York as well, but for now it'll be London. Venu, do you have to be good at teaching to be successful online? Absolutely not. You have to be good at being good to be successful online, and teaching can come after that. Seriously. I would say sometimes the best teachers are the ones who are just good at stuff. Sometimes the worst teachers are great at conveying things, but actually they don't know what they're talking about. So be careful. I've seen plenty of people who are very good at presenting, and people get sucked into how wonderful they come across and how they look, but actually the message is vacuous and you don't get really much value from them. So the being good at teaching, because I've taught most of my life, because even when I was very much younger, when I was as a teenager, I was doing taekwondo and things like that. Then I became an instructor as well, and I have 2 taekwondo schools too. It all stems from understanding what it is you do. If in your mind you can make something simple enough to be understood, you're more likely to be able to convey it, and that's where teaching comes in. You don't need to read too many books to be good at explaining things. What you need to do is spend time trying to explain things. And what you find is when people don't get it, and you keep explaining things to different people and they all don't get it, you naturally start refining what you're saying. You maybe dumb it down a bit, you maybe make it a little bit more concise. Then over time you find you just get quite good at doing it. But it's like with anything, enough exposure to something, enough intensity of practicing will get you there. I really strongly suggest that if any of you feel you've got a great service, but you're concerned about timidity or about being shy or your ability to teach, don't worry about it, because plenty of people out there will still get your message. And I even remember some videos I put online, and I watched back and I'm like, what are you even talking about, Rich? It doesn't even make sense. But then people say, no, it makes perfect sense, thanks so much. And I just think, well, maybe I did explain it okay. So practice makes really good rather. And I think that if you've got a good service, then you'll be able to explain it, no problem at all. And also, you don't have to be good at teaching to be successful online, because there are other things you can do. You know, I know loads of people who are, for instance, Forex traders or MLM workers or people in affiliate marketing. You don't have to do a single bit of teaching unless you want to scale up some kind of business. Focus in on selling instead, and that works much better. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be good at storytelling. And again, this is practice. Simple as that. Take your time, but spend that time practicing with people. A good way to do it, I said this to someone recently, if you're not interacting with people, as in public speaking, a good kind of halfway is to try Facebook Live like this, because I get a vibe from you guys, which is wonderful. And then, you know, you ping up the hearts and things like that. That's really kind. However, there's no one here who, although you could write it, of course, you don't get people, you can't see their faces, and you can't see if they're like bored out of their minds, tapping away on their phone or taking selfies. It feels like you've got a captive audience if you just know you've got people watching. So it's a good kind of practice until you go to public speaking. I'm very fortunate because my first role very quickly evolved into managing people, so I had to kind of teach them what I did. Best way to teach is show people. That's all I find. And so when I first was managing a team of salespeople, the best way of showing them what I did was just get on and sell, because it was a nice way of them making money by me closing them deals and learning the ropes as we went. So that seems to work. Don't be a kind of teacher that never does it themselves, okay? If some people teach so much but don't actually ever do the thing themselves, okay? I wouldn't be much of a business consultant if I'd never built or run a business of my own, okay? So it makes more sense to be doing it as well. Any other things here? Do I have any chances to be picked up if I'm in the USA? Jose, I don't quite understand the question, so I apologise. Do I have any chances to be picked up if I'm in the USA? I don't think I understand, sorry. If you elaborate, maybe I'll get to it. I just wanted to finish by saying, yes, so a couple of notices. In the next 24 hours, there will be the incentive. So the 30 words you need to give me for 30 days free mentoring will come for 3 people. I'll be announcing that tomorrow. Startup Business TV, the next episode will be coming out in the next 24 hours as well. That's number 4. If you have not watched the last one, I really enjoyed it. And loads of you loved Nike and loads of you love Starbucks. So please go watch it. It was on Amazon. I really enjoyed doing it, and I feel like the lessons there are crucial if any of you are running a business, or especially if you're about to start running a business or harbour dreams of running a business of your own. They're crucial, those lessons. So make sure you get into that as well. But otherwise, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you all, and I'll catch up with you soon. Have a massive Monday, all of you. Have a great week too, and speak to you soon. Bye bye.